They trained killers in silence. They armed them with math, patience, and rifles that could reach across continents. But no one told them a single shot could end an entire program. Snow hissed across the Ironveil Range as Sergeant Aria Monroe, call sign Specter One, pressed her cheek to the cold polymer stock of a Barrett M107A1 50 cal. Her hazel eyes narrowed behind the scope, the glass reducing the world to a distant notch on a ridgeline. The man at that notch was a name that crawled through intercepted chatter in broken pieces. Dmitri Orlov, a senior architect in a program with tendrils that led back to something darker. Volkov's Circle. Program Borealis didn't train marksmen. It manufactured assassins. Aria's breath fogged the hide. To anyone else, she was a ghost in white, a shadow that the snow tried to erase. To Master Sergeant Cole Vance, lying beside her with range cards spread and fingers stained with cold. She was something more, a weapon shaped by discipline, a mind that could turn numbers into fate. Winds pushing east. 6 knots. Top layer only, Vance said. Pencil slicing across paper. Below that it goes calm. Mirage shows a 2-degree right at 2000. His voice held the flat. Steady cadence of men who measure life in seconds and charts. She didn't answer because some calculations lived beneath words. She felt the drift pressure ripples sliding across the valley like an invisible current. This wasn't luck. It was the sight pattern recognition hardened into muscle. It was focus so fine it became a tool for survival. Through the reticle, Orlov lifted a hand. Around him 5 men shifted, formation rifles slung. Optics catching half light. They moved like technicians of violence. Each idle gesture a practiced line from doctrine. They weren't trainees polishing discipline. They were students of predation. Aria's jaw tightened. She saw the stolen maps in her mind. Routes inked red. Convoys walking into ambushes planned on someone else's table. She pictured squads overseas crossing terrain that had been prepared by the hand now framed in her crosshairs. Still, she hesitated. A shot at 3540 meters was not simply a kill. It was decapitation. It was severing a program before it seeded other battlefields. And the physics were merciless. The round would hang in thin air for nearly 10 seconds. The world acting on it with spin and Coriolis and temperature. Miss and triangulation would paint them on the map. Miss and discretion became a sentence. Vance glanced up, reading her hesitation like a page. "You've got one clean window," he said. "Command won't sign this. You confirm ID and you decide. That's your authority. That's as close as we get. Discretion, not an order." A burden heavier than the rifle across her lap. Her father's voice rose out of memory, a Montana ridge. Rough hands steadying her. "It's never about the trigger pull. Aria, it's about deciding if you should pull at all." She flexed her trigger hand, gloves cracking with frost, and let the math settle into her bones. She checked once more distance, wind, elevation. Scope mills, 1,000 figures collapsed into one small motion. The man turned, his profile registered in the glass. Positive ID. Vance exhaled. That's him. The ridgeline seemed to draw a long, cold breath. Snow blurred the world beyond the crosshair. Specter One's finger found the trigger. The cold of metal pressed against skin. Pull and cut the head from the snake before it slithered free. Or hold and let the storm gather until it swallowed them all. The reticle steadied. The mountain answered with wind and weather and the faint, terrible sound of choices. The longest shot of her life was waiting for the squeeze. Where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments. If you live for real spec military stories, hit subscribe so you never miss the next mission. The rifles ceased to be metal and polymer. It became a narrow corridor between breath and consequence. Aria sank deeper into the snow, muscles and senses aligning until the world thinned to one black dot in glass. Crosshairs drank the distance. Everything else melted into muffled weather and Vance's low, steady voice. Vance inked numbers on the range card with surgeon's precision. Elevation 97 MOA. Coriolis 1.2 mils right. Spin drift 1 left. You're threading a needle through a hurricane. He tapped the pencil, eyes caught in the scope's reflection. You trusted. Trust was too small a word. This was recognition. The sight practiced pattern recognition turned lethal, not mystic. Muscle memory married to math. Through the reticle, Orlov moved among his students. They fanned into textbook formations bounding Overwatch. Sniper-spotter rotations, each motion a page from a manual designed to teach killing as craft. This wasn't defensive training. It was rehearsal for predation. Once these men graduated, they wouldn't defend borders, they'd redraw them. That weight sat heavy on her ribs. 1 man, 1 bullet. A chance to amputate a cancer before it metastasized. But at 3,540 meters, the physics were merciless, a degree of temperature. A whisper of pressure. A gust off a ridge, and he could turn history into a scavenger hunt. At that distance, a round would be in the air for roughly 9 to 10 seconds, 9 heartbeats stretched thin across mountain wind and Coriolis whisper. Vance lifted the kestrel, squinted into the thin air. Split winds. Top current east, low current west. You're fighting a split. He set the device down like a verdict. We won't get a better window. Her father's letter came back again. A quiet ledger of responsibility. This gift isn't for glory. It's for bearing what others cannot. The sight steadied her hand, but it did not absolve consequence. The crosshair drifted, then steadied. Orlov half-turned. For a heartbeat, his gaze swept the ridgeline. Paranoia, or the field sense of a man taught to feel danger before it arrived. Aria could not know. Her finger brushed the trigger. The safety of indecision was gone. Ahead, history or disaster. Target confirmed. Vance breathed a fuse soft as paper. Your call. Specter One. She inhaled, the cold tearing at her lungs. She exhaled, and the world collapsed to reticle and breath. From beyond the valley, a low rumble swelled into rotors. The silhouette was bulky, paint unreadable at that distance, not NATO. Hostile profile. The vibration threaded the snow, threading itself through the shot. Vance drew a thin line with his teeth. Clock's running. Take your window now, or we lose him. Mirage danced. The sight picture wavered. The moment sharpened into a race against the elements and against time itself. Her pulse slowed to a machine's rhythm. Her fingers settled. 1 heartbeat, 1 squeeze. The next second would decide more than tonight. It might decide entire battlefields. The valley seemed to hold its breath. Rotor blades chewed the thin mountain air. Echoes drumming off the ridges. Bulkier frame. Darker silhouette Russian. Not NATO. Reinforcements, not rescue. Each rotation threatened to pull every eye skyward, to burn their hide alive. Aria's finger curved against the trigger. Steel against bone. The Barrett pressed cold to her cheek, humming like a predator. Her pulse slowed beyond flesh, each beat stretching into forever. Vance's whisper cut like flint. Send it. She inhaled, exhaled. Math fused with instinct drift. Spin. Gravity until numbers became faith. She squeezed. The rifle cracked. Thunder smothered by snow. Recoil slammed her shoulder. But all she felt was the invisible arc slicing frozen air. 1 second. 2. 3. The rotors roared louder. Drowning thought. 4. 5. 6. Orlov lifted an arm to signal. 7. 8. 9. His skull snapped sideways. Crimson fog against white. Silence hammered down. No triumph, no relief. Just disbelief because doctrine said a shot like that didn't exist. Vance let out a breath, half laugh, half curse. Jesus, you did it! Below! Trainees froze. Confusion curdled into rage. Rifles swung. Glass flared as scopes swept the ridges, hunting the ghost who had severed their master. Pack it, Vance hissed. 2 minutes before they lock our grid. Aria's hand moved to chamber another, but his palm caught her wrist. No, a second shot marks us. Move! They crawled from the hide, snow grinding under elbows, packs half-zipped. Russian shouts ricocheted off stone, blind tracers clawed upward, sparks chasing their retreat. The hunt had begun. Aria's lungs burned as they sprinted low across the ridge, the Barrett dragging like an anchor. Overhead, the Russian helo swept in, searchlight carving the mountain raw. The beam slashed the snow where they'd been seconds before. Down, Vance shoved her into jagged rock as rounds spanged off granite. The spotlight wheeled back, bleaching darkness into blinding white. Her impossible shot had landed, but now the entire range had turned predator. Vance keyed the radio. Voice clipped. Overlord. Specter One. Target neutralized. Enemy air overhead. Multiple contacts closing. Advise. Static filled the net. Then the verdict. Flat and merciless Specter One. Negative exfil. Weather's grounded all birds. You are on your own. The words cut sharper than recoil. No rescue, no cavalry, just two operators with thinning ammo on a mountain full of wolves. Vance's gaze locked on hers. Stonehard. We vanish or we die. Decide. The spotlight locked onto their ridge. Merciless. Snow whipped in rotor wash. Boots closed in from every flank. Aria slammed a fresh mag home, jaw set. If the mountain wanted to bury her, it would bleed first. The impossible shot had ended one empire, but the real war had only just begun. Snow whipped sideways in the helicopter's wake as the Russian bird banked low, its searchlight slashing the ridge into blinding white. Gunfire chewed at rock. Chips spat like angry hornets. Aria flattened against cold stone, the Barrett across her chest, then slid it to her sling weight she could carry without letting it pull her under. Vance answered with a short. Savage burst from his M4. Tracers stitched the darkness. Move! The command landed like a hammer. There was no time for debate. Only motion. They ran the slope, boots punching through drifts that clawed at ankles. The trainees had dropped the shape of students and become predators, fanning out to cut the flanks. Muzzle flashes popped across the snow. Each flare revealed more faces, more barrels honing in on the ridge. Aria dove behind a boulder, slammed a fresh mag home, and found the gap. One man folded into powder, another crumpled under the next squeeze, for every body that hit the ice. Two more surged forward. They didn't break. They closed ranks. The helo's door gun barked, tearing shallow trenches into frozen ground. Rock splintered inches from her temple. Vance shoved her flat with an urgency that tasted like fear. Stay down this bird's hunting shadows. They crawled like ghosts, palms raw from grit, boots scraping shale. Stillness meant death. Movement bought seconds. Each breath was rationed, each step borrowed time. Then a heavy round punched Vance's shoulder. He went down with a curse, stone biting his back. Blood spread like spilled ink across the white. He tried to push up and couldn't. Pain carved his face. His eyes flared with ugly. Stubborn life. Master Sergeant. The cry tore Aria out of numbness. Adrenaline snapped into muscle. She hauled him into a shallow scrape, ignoring the scream trapped behind her teeth. He looked at her through the pain. Leave me. Aria, go. You taught me to fight, not quit, she snapped, voice thin as ice. We both get out, or neither does. Hands that knew the drill moved fast pressure. Tourniquet. Knots tied like prayers. The blood steamed where it met the cold. A hot lie against the storm. Vance forced a grin through grit. Half a joke that tasted of iron. You should have left me. Not a chance. She said, move when I tell you. Above. The enemy helo wheeled for another pass. Flashlights carved lines up the slope. Voices closed like tide. The mountain's angles shrank. Roots became funnels that funneled death. Vance pointed with a trembling hand toward a narrow chute, cleaved into shadow, a cramped slot between crags that might hide them long enough to slip the net. There, ugly. But it's a path. They scrambled. Bullets chewed the chute, spitting stone and snow into avalanches. Aria slipped, nails tearing on frozen roots, but kept driving. The helo's gunner tracked every movement. A heavy burst slammed the slope and threw grit into their faces. Vance grunted and pushed forward anyway. At the lip, she shoved him into shallow cover and dropped beside him. Lungs burning, her hands worked another knot, breath ragged with cold and speed. He tasted iron, managed a laugh that was all teeth. "You trained me to win. You trained me to win," she echoed, steady though everything inside her trembled. "So don't you dare quit. Below." Flashlight beams stitched the slope. Enemy voices rose, deliberate and cruel. The chopper hunted lanes of light like a beast. Survival was no longer long-range math, it was teeth and claw speed. Angle, improvisation. Aria cinched the Barrett tight, thumbed the bolt, set her jaw. Vance's dressing threatened to fail. The ridge narrowed to a knife edge of rock, blood and resolve. She leveled her gaze at the climb and whispered not to him, but to the mountain. Then make them regret the climb. The wind swallowed the words. Snow whipped harder. Boots pounded closer. The next heartbeat would decide whether the impossible shot became a grave marker or the first strike of something far larger. The night bled into storm, as if the mountain itself wanted them buried. Snow lashed the ridgeline, drowning gunfire into distant thunder. Aria Monroe braced against jagged rock. Barrett steady, keeping Russian trainees at bay while Master Sergeant Vance bled beside her. Every squeeze of the trigger felt stolen, each heartbeat borrowed. The gunship circled again, its beam sweeping like a predator's eye. Then another sound, deeper, defiant. A Blackhawk cut through weather no pilot should have dared. This wasn't command. It was a rogue crew wagering their wings on two fading lives. Rescue had come not by order, but by choice. Flares hissed crimson across the blizzard. The Russian helo broke contact, unwilling to duel. Aria slung the Barrett, hauled Vance onto her shoulders, and staggered downhill. Adrenaline turned his weight into raw momentum. The American bird dropped a line into the gale. Crewmen leaned out, voices lost in the storm. Hands seized them and dragged them inside. The instant her boots left the snow, the mountain vanished beneath rotor wash. Tracers clawed upward, sparks swallowed by whiteout. The Blackhawk's gunners spat fire into the dark, carving space between them and pursuit. In the cabin's red glow, Vance's bloodied hand found her wrist, gravel in his voice. Unbroken. "You made history tonight." History. She didn't feel it. She felt recoil still in her bones, storm in her lungs, his blood burning her sleeves. One bullet at 3540 meters had redrawn a battlefield, but its echo would outlive the storm. Back at base, medics pulled Vance away. Aria sat in silence, hands raw, ears ringing. Officers crowded close, questions sharp, analysts scribbling. Commanders had already filed her impossible shot into neat lines, distance rounded down. Conditions softened, risk rewritten into doctrine. On paper, it would say just another kill. The truth that she had bent math and chance until the impossible broke would survive only in whispers. When the room emptied, she pulled her father's letter from her pocket, edges frayed, ink blurred by snow. She read the line that mattered. "This gift isn't about being seen. It's about seeing further than others and carrying what they cannot." For the first time, she understood. The shot was never about records, not glory. It was about halting a storm before it reached continents, about lives she would never meet, in cities she might never see, outside. The clouds tore open. Moonlight silvered the peaks. Aria stepped into the cold, lungs burning clean. Somewhere beyond those ridges, Volkov's network was already shifting, new predators rising. But tonight proved something no program, no enemy could measure the reach of one soldier who refused to look away. She folded the letter, pressed it to her chest, and whispered, "I'll carry it. Always." The wind answered like an oath. Because sometimes the most powerful shot isn't the one that ends a life, but the one that reminds you why you fight to protect it.